What happened? Something we lost?
I think we lost connection, bro.
Anyway, it's 11:30. Maharaj is here.
We should start. Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances. This is Rameshwar, Maharaj. You are able to hear me, Maharaj?
You couldn't hear, huh?
Thank you, thank you. Hare Krishna, Maharaj. So, welcome to our ISKCON Columbus Sunday feast. And we just had a 10-minute kirtan, Maharaj. So that's our.
Yes.
Our next program is for the next 1 hour. We have the Sunday feast discourse, and followed by announcements.
Okay.
So, and as today, as Maharaj, you requested, like we are telling everybody to turn on their camera. Who's on Zoom.
Or else go on to Facebook.
And YouTube. You know, we have it on YouTube, Maharaj. This is getting streamed on YouTube.
This gives people an excuse to multitask during class, and that's not the purpose of having a class. The purpose of having a class is to sit and listen
Exactly.
and understand what's going on, not do the dishes and sweep the floor and
Yes.
wash the windows and stuff like that. So if you're on YouTube, come back over and
Yes.
listen to that.
Thank you, Maharaj. Sure, we will ensure that, Maharaj, and we have our senior member of our congregation, Prem Sindhu Prabhu. He will give a brief introduction about you, and then we'll go from there. Go ahead, Prem Sindhu Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj, for giving your association through this Zoom call, virtual.
How
I
come I don't see him?
okay.
Oh, Prem Sindhu. I thought you said Prem. Oh, okay. Who's that? What about Prem Vilas?
Yes, Prabhu. Maharaj, I think he's traveling.
Oh, okay. And his wife, I know him and his wife, Lolita.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Go ahead, Prem Sindhu. Yeah.
So, His Holiness Rtadhvaja Maharaj is a disciple of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Maharaj joined in 1975 in ISKCON, the ISKCON movement in 1975, and he then was serving in many different capacities. He has done book distribution. He has managed different temples, and he was also the regional secretary in Florida and South America. Then Maharaj, he took sannyas in 1985 on the day of Gaur Purnima in Mayapur, and he's been, instrumental in the Gurukul development. He's worked with the Gurukul for about 10 years, and he started the boys trip, the Gurukul boys summer trip, for about 12 years. He was involved with that, and now Maharaj is. I think you're based in Florida, Maharaj. Is that
I'm
where?
actually in Dallas. I don't have a base, but I do this year because of COVID. I just stayed here for a whole year.
I met you in Florida many times before when I
Yeah,
used.
yeah, because I managed Florida for years. Yeah.
So now Maharaj is assisting devotees in different parts of Asia and America. So we are very fortunate to have Maharaj with us today, and he's going to enlighten us on the Bhagavad Gita, the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. So thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you all for inviting me. I don't know how did you figure out where I was at? So anybody have like any updates from Columbus? How are you all doing?
We are doing great here.
You're doing okay, Columbus? It's not too cold.
It was, now it's getting better.
We didn't have any electricity. We didn't have any water for days here. We had a big blizzard. When you have a snow in Dallas, everything stops. But you have snow in Columbus, everything keeps going unless it's ice, right? Unless it's ice. So people here don't know what to do when it snows. So any particular part of the Gita someone has, what would you say, a liking for, or how would you say that? Any particular part that interests you? Because the Gita is such a wonderful book. As we know, it's the song of God. Srila Prabhupada has explained many times that, especially because he wrote Bhagavad Gita and he put as it is. He wrote as it is. And so what it means is as it is, or as it, just as if Krishna is speaking. It's not any different than if Krishna is speaking to us. He said we shouldn't think that because we weren't there, maybe we were there 5,000 years ago, but chances are not, because we would have been liberated. But if Krishna is present in the words of the Gita, this is one of the things we have to understand. In the introduction to the Gita, Srila Prabhupada explains that at least theoretically, one should accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And I'm just seeing what I know the introduction almost by heart, because it's just one of my favorite parts of the Gita. And so at least in theory, as we go through the Gita, understand how Krishna is actually present there, and Arjuna's doubts. Anyone in this group, raise your hand if you're free of doubts. You know, if you're free of doubts, raise your hand. That's the thing. You know, everyone has. If you're free of doubts, you have absolutely no doubt. Yomam evam asang mudo gyanati purushottamam. This is from the almost the last verse of the 15th chapter. That one who understands Krishna to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead without a doubt is to be understood as the knower of everything. Then bhajanti mam. Then the end result of knowing everything. In other words, without a doubt, no. Then one who knows Krishna to be the Supreme Personality without a doubt, that person is understood to be the knower of everything. So if you were the knower of everything, what would you do? So Krishna says, the one who is a knower of everything, they engage in my devotional service. Because they've figured out that everything else really has no true value. Because nasato vijite bhavo na bhavo vijite sataha, that everything that is material is temporary and has no value in chasing. We chase after these things that are valueless. And that which is spirit is eternal. And so we want to search out that which is eternal, our eternal nature, our eternal existence, eternal relationship with God. And the idea, it's okay, Ruth, don't worry if you make a little bit of noise. One of my girl cool boys, who's now a young married man with 3 children, and he's changing my 5-gallon bottle of water. So one who, I can't pick it up anymore, I'm too old to pick up 5 gallons of water. No. So one who understands Krishna to be the Supreme Lord without a doubt, he's the knower of everything, and because he knows, it's not like a know-it-all. You know, it's not. They don't become like a know-it-all and just kind of like, show off their super, big brain and stuff like that. They just come to the conclusion, just like that verse, Nasato vijate bhavo na bhavo vijate sataha, that those who have studied the nature of this world can understand that everything here has a temporary existence. And if we chase these things, we're going to remain in a temporary existence. Just like I have a Hare Krishna sannyasi, what do you call it, business card. A business card. And it just has my name, which nobody can spell and no one practically can understand. And then on the back, it just has my email, no phone number on it, just my email, because then you can block the emails. And then also it has, on the back, it has a little statement that I took from the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita. Because when you study Bhagavad Gita, especially the introduction, it describes here that Prabhupada says, just what is the Bhagavad Gita? If I were to ask you, I will ask you, as a matter of fact, because I like to have a back and forth discussion. I don't like just to be sitting on the platform and preaching. I like to have dialogue. So if I were someone to say to you, what is the Bhagavad Gita? What would you say? Raise your hand, open up your microphone if you can. What would you? Yes, Rtadhvaja.
So Maharaj, Bhagavad Gita is basically the interaction or discussion between Arjuna and Krishna.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good.
I would start with that. Yeah.
Very interaction between Arjuna and Krishna. Anyone else? A very good answer.
It's a manual for conducting human life.
The manual, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, it's a manual. Yeah. In other words, just like this is like my phone. My phone came with a manual about this thick, how to figure out how to. My iPhone has a manual about that thick. Anyone else?
It's a path to perfection.
So go ahead.
Sorry.
I can't.
It's a path for perfect devotional service.
Process of devotional service. Naveen, and you had your hand up?
Everybody has their own opinion. Here, directly Krishna is giving his opinion.
No, okay. So what Prabhupada does, you have to take a look at how Prabhupada's, he's quite, you can't say enough about Srila Prabhupada. Literally, you cannot say enough about Prabhupada, because Prabhupada, when he writes it, just what is Bhagavad Gita, question mark. Then he says, the purpose of Bhagavad Gita. You could say it's a book, it's a dialogue, it's a this, it's a that. The purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to deliver mankind from the nescience of material existence. That one sentence is so powerful, because in that one sentence, the purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to deliver mankind. In other words, we're in the wrong place. We got to be delivered someplace else. That one word, deliver, is a very powerful word. I like to go through these things word by word, because it brings out the life, brings out the life of the teachings, and deliver mankind from the nescience of material existence. We know the word nescience, it means ignorance. Just like I usually begin the class by saying Om Agyan Tamadandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Umnitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, that we were born in the darkness of ignorance, and our spiritual master is opening our heart with the torchlight of knowledge. And therefore we offer most humble and respectful obeisances at the dust of his lotus feet. So Srila Prabhupada is delivering us, he's delivering us from the nescience, our nescience. We become, what would you say, influenced by the material energy so much that we don't even know who we are. I take that, what would you say, that pause, right? That speaker pause, because when you give the pause and people can reflect on the thought, that we're being delivered, we're delivering mankind from the nescience. In other words, we're born in the darkness of ignorance. We have no idea who we are, absolutely no idea. And yet we're going so fast. And what are we doing? Just like in the fourth chapter of the Gita, it's described that one should know what is action and what is inaction. One should know what sinful life is, and one should know what non-sinful life is. It's very difficult to understand action, and it's described that one who sees action in inaction and inaction within action is actually the seer, the true seer. So just like we can, just like I meant, like they would always tell the devotees, why don't you get a job? The non-devotees saw us in inaction, even though we were in action. We were utilizing this life, the action of this life, the movement or the process of this life. We were actually moving forward quite rapidly through the process of devotional service. Yet the non-devotee will see this as inaction, because they don't understand the nature of material world, which is asat. And so the idea is that when we can see action within inaction, in other words, just like not building some, I wish I would have had the chance to ask Srila Prabhupada, are you saying skyscraper on purpose, or are you just saying skyscraper because that's just like a little Bengali, like accent or something like that? Because Prabhupada called them these skyscraper buildings. I find it quite interesting, even if it's a mispronunciation, or even if it's just on purpose, it's just so cool, because they end up being skyscrapers. They just end up being a pile of scrap. I work in Asia, which means China and Hong Kong and a lot of places like that. And the buildings are going up and the other ones are coming up. Buildings are going down, they're going up, going down. One time I was in, I can't remember, someplace in Western China, and I looked out my hotel room and I saw 23 cranes just outside my window. They're building so many buildings so fast, I saw 23 cranes, not birds, those cranes, things that build buildings, like those big, like I-beam movers and stuff like that. So they're knocking them down and they're building them up and knocking them down and building them up. And they think they're progressing. All they're doing is just rearranging the material elements. And so, and then Srila Prabhupada continues in this little introduction here. Every man is in difficulty in so many ways as Arjuna was in difficulty having to fight the battle of Kurukshetra. Everyone. Now, Prabhupada uses man, I hope, I would assume it's gender neutral. In other words, everyone is in difficulty, just like Arjuna was also in difficulty. So in Arjuna's difficulty, what did he do? Anybody have an idea what Arjuna did when he was feeling difficulty?
Shelter of Krishna.
What's that, Prem?
He took shelter of Krishna.
Yeah, he took shelter of Krishna. That's what Srila Prabhupada here. Arjuna surrendered unto Krishna, and consequently the Bhagavad Gita was spoken. Consequently, as if by chance, Prabhupada's so cool. Because consequently, the Bhagavad Gita was spoken. Not only Arjuna, but every one of us is full of anxieties because of this material existence. Every one of us is full of anxiety. You may not be feeling full anxiety right now, but if something, all it doesn't take, what does it take? Just like one little noise here, one little noise there, just like, one, we were sitting here, all of a sudden all electricity went off, what we're going to do. The water there was a river in our front, on our road in the front of our house. The water was running down the street because the water main on our street broke. And there was so much water out there, but none in our house. And so Krishna is so nice because that morning before the water main broke, I'm staying with one couple who I love them very much. They're just such nice Vaishnavas. They run the restaurant, they manage the temples, do all kinds of things. And I said, you think, some people are running out of water. Let's fill up some buckets with water. So we had like 25, 35 gallons of water, and then the water broke. And so there's a river of water. And so the nature of the material world. Anybody know the word for anxiety? Huh? Somebody must know that. Like somebody besides Prem Sindhu knows everything. I'll just Prem Sindhu, go ahead.
Kunta.
Huh? Kunta, yeah. And place of anxiety. What is the spiritual world called?
Vaikuntha.
Vaikuntha, the place that's free of anxiety. Now, which place you want to live? You want to stay in a place that's full of anxiety? You want to stay in a place that's always cause everybody is having difficulty. Nobody. I remember this. I don't know if Srila Prabhupada said this or one of the Vaishnavas or his disciples. These things come on their own. They come on their own. Just because this is what I think the story of the Prahlad Maharaj explains this is that we try to avoid the suffering in this world. But just like Bhishma, I'm just finishing up that chapter, the 9th chapter of the Bhagavatam in the first canto. And Bhishma says it's due to providence that he had taken a vow to protect the crown. The Sindapur ended up on the wrong side of the battle. I mean, it's all happening by providence. It's happening by providence. And so the idea is that this difficulties, they come, there we have a certain amount of troubles due to us at the time, due to our previous actions. In the example that was given, that sometimes devotees will explain this, that nobody goes to the doctor and asks them, can you please give me COVID? Please give me COVID, please give me cancer, please give me, like a heart problem, please give me high blood pressure. But these things automatically come, even though we don't go and ask for them. In the same way, good things will happen to us. We don't have to overly endeavor for them. Atihara paraschascha prajapo niyamagraha. That we we have to endeavor. The third chapter of the Gita says that one cannot maintain themselves unless they work. Within the first 5-10 verses of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells everybody, you got to work. It's not by renunciation alone that one achieves perfection. Everyone has to work because you can't maintain yourself unless you do something. And then he connects it to Krishna, Yagnartha, that by performing sacrifice for Vishnu, I mean, you already have to sacrifice, you already have to work just to keep yourself alive. You have to do all these things. So if you're going to have to do that, you may as well do that and get some spiritual credit at the same time. It's like being, do they have dual enrollment in Columbus, Ohio for high school students? I don't know. They have this, they have it here in Texas. When I was working in Gurukul, when the boys would get to the 11th grade, we would send them to the community college.
Yeah, they have that here.
Yeah. And so what you do is you do dual enrollment. And what dual enrollment means, and if you're smart enough, you can test out of high school, which most of our boys were definitely smart enough to do that. That's not so hard. And when you go to the community college, you take college classes and you get credit for your high school classes because they're like AP classes or they're college placement classes. Considered in your high school, they're considered like college placement classes. And so by the time you finish high school, you have an AA or an Associate of Science or Associates of Art, and you also got a high school diploma. So that's the example that's given. In other words, we're going to have to work. We're going to have to do something. So if we only do the work to provide for ourselves in a material level or in a material way, then we only get credit that way. But if we engage the same activities in the service of Krishna, for the service of the pleasure of Krishna, then we're like in dual enrollment. We're in dual enrollment. We're getting spiritual credits, and I've not missed a meal in 47 years in the Hare Krishna movement. It's going pretty good, and so we have to actually understand our situation here. Our situation here is quite precarious. We know that. But at the same time, we can free ourselves from the difficulties of this material world by understanding how the whole thing works. In other words, just like, it's like when you get to the end of the 4th chapter, Krishna explains that there's nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Because this transcendental knowledge gives us an understanding. First, the 4th chapter is quite interesting, actually, because it's like about 5 sections to that chapter. But at the end, it describes as transcendental knowledge and how beneficial transcendental knowledge is. It's just like the sun rises in the morning and in the darkness, in the dark, you can't see anything. You'll mistake the example Prabhupada gives in the dark. I don't know what part of the Bhagavatam that comes from, but that's another thing. But in the dark, you may mistake a rope to be a snake, or you may mistake a snake to be a rope because you can't see clearly. But when we come to true knowledge, we can, when the sun comes up in the morning, when the sun comes up and the light is there, light is compared to knowledge. So when we're in this type of knowledge, we have the ability to understand things as they are. We won't misidentify a snake to be a rope. We won't misidentify a rope to be a snake. This is what is the value of Krishna consciousness. One of the things of the value. I mean, there's so many things that are of value in Krishna consciousness. So then this is all just to tell you about my business card. Because then on the back of my business card it says our very existence is in the atmosphere of non-existence. Actually, we're not meant to be threatened by non-existence. Our existence is eternal. So I put that little thing on the back of my business card. And so when people will read this, our very existence is in the atmosphere of non-existence. To me, that's a really catchy phrase. Our very existence. These words are so powerful. Our very existence is in the atmosphere of non-existence. So how could we exist in a place that is an atmosphere where there is non-existence? In other words, when you think about it, it comes to the point where we are eternal, because it says here our existence is eternal, and we're not meant to be threatened by non-existence. So what are we doing here? Why would we come to a place where we're not meant to be? And so hopefully, I've distributed many of those business cards. I've yet to get an email from anybody, but I'm still going along because I give out books everywhere I go. Yes, we're here.
Sorry, I didn't change my. It's Rukmini Devidasi. Yes, thank you, Maharaj. So, have you noticed that? Have you found that there are some people who actually want non-existence? Like Srila Prabhupada's Pranam mantra says, he's trying to get rid of impersonalism and voidism, but voidism is actually a thing. Shunyata. People are actually aiming for non-existence, and I personally have never understood the appeal, but it's actually really widespread. So what has been your experience with that?
Yeah, we can get into that because it's explained in the Bhagavad Gita here. It's explained that in the 10th verse of the Bhagavad Gita. It says, being free from attachment. This is I'll just give the translation number 410. Being freed from attachment, fear, anger, being fully absorbed in me, taking refuge in me. I had to look up refuge one day. Many persons in the past became purified by me, by knowledge of me, and thus they attained transcendental knowledge from me. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains, I'll have to go down here just to find out exactly some. Okay. Generally, okay, I'm just trying to get the essence of it, but I keep going one more sentence up, one more sentence up. So consequently, they consider the Supreme to be impersonal, and because they are too much absorbed, the conception of retaining the personality after liberation from matter frightens them, because we have so many bad experiences in personal relationships and personal, it just being something that like just being a sentient being. In other words, because in the material world, to have the good, you have to experience the bad, kind of. They say like that. In other words, you won't know health if you feel unhealthy. Then when you feel unhealthy, then you'll appreciate healthiness and stuff like that, because there's a duality in this world. When they are informed that spiritual life is also individual and personal, they become afraid of becoming persons again, so they naturally prefer a kind of merging into an impersonal void. Right? So it's due to having personal experiences in this world where we can't understand how a personal existence in a different realm, the spiritual realm, can actually be healthy, because we experience it being unhealthy here. So they naturally, Prabhupada says here, they naturally, because of nescience, true nescience, true lacking of knowledge, they prefer a kind of merging into the void or impersonal. Generally, they compare the living entities. This is how they give the analogy. Generally, they compare the living entities to bubbles in the ocean, which merge in the ocean. That is the highest perfection of spiritual existence, attainable without individual personality. This is a kind of fearful stage of life, devoid of personal knowledge of spiritual existence. Furthermore, there are many people who cannot understand spiritual existence at all. Being embarrassed by so many theories and by contradictions of various types of philosophical speculation, they become disgusted or angry, and they foolishly conclude that there is no supreme cause and that everything is ultimately void. These are the words. This for me explains that quite clearly. Prabhupada just directly speaking to us. Such people are in a diseased condition of life. Some people are too materially attached and therefore they do not give attention to spiritual life. Some want to merge into the supreme spiritual cause, the causal origin, and some are Brahman, and some of them disbelieving in everything, being angry at all sorts of spiritual speculation out of helplessness. The last class of men take shelter of some type of intoxication, and their effective hallucinations become sometimes accepted as spiritual visions. I mean, talk about Prabhupada going systematically through these things. One of the things I'll just read the last one. One has to get rid of all three stages of material consciousness: attachment to material life, fearful of spiritual identity, and the conception that a void that arises from frustration in life. See how Prabhupada, I don't know if, he picks these words so specific, like the frustration of material life. And so just going back, to one of the points I brought up in the beginning, that Krishna is personally present here in the book. And now one of the things I usually do when I give classes, I just say, everyone just imagine, this is what do you call this? Imagery. It's kind of like an imagery program here. You can even close your eyes. Just imagine that you're Prabhupada's, assistant for a day. It's like I know one devotee, and he ended up being Prabhupada's guard from like 11 till 3 in the morning or something like that. 11 at night to 3 in the morning, because we used to have a person stand there so nobody would disturb Srila Prabhupada. And he could hear Prabhupada, getting out his dictaphone, turning it on, and then he could see through the window or something. You could see Prabhupada taking the books off the shelf, opening them up, pushing the thing. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, click. Was it click? Was engaged with the Godhead, click. Him clicking and giving his Prabhupada, his Bhaktivedanta purports. Imagine if someone said, yes, you can be Prabhupada's assistant today, and you can go there and and then all of a sudden you're hearing Prabhupada dictate the purports to the Bhagavatam, or of course the Bhagavad Gita was done that way too at a certain point. So this is the same potent. Prabhupada is personally present here. We have the opportunity to just have the imagery that we're sitting we're right at Prabhupada, right with Prabhupada, and Prabhupada's speaking right now. He wrote this introduction. It's a whole book. He actually spoke it. There's a tape of it. And if we can understand that we are personally present, there's no difference. There's no difference between hearing Srila Prabhupada and being personally present with Srila Prabhupada. We have to understand this transcendental nature of spiritual relationships. They're not a mundane relationship in any sense of the word. They're totally a transcendental experience. And if we just take the moment to say, to offer prayers before we read, and to read on a regular basis, and in so reading, understand our good fortune of being in the association of a Vaishnava of Prabhupada's caliber. You cannot even imagine the caliber of Srila Prabhupada's level. Who could come in the middle of the 60s and start a spiritual movement that would develop into something like what we have today? And I remember when Prabhupada was in I wasn't there, but the devotees explained it. Prabhupada was in San Francisco, so they had 26 Second Avenue on the Lower East Side, next to the Bowery, close to the Bowery, like the most unusual place. And then they had 518, whatever it was, Frederick Street, which was like 3 or 4 blocks from Haight and Ashbury, which was the center of I don't even know, some kind of menagerie. The hippie movement was like a total menagerie. I don't even know if they were human, and Prabhupada wasn't feeling well. He'd had some heart problem, and he was going to go to India. And he said to the disciples, please keep this International Society for Krishna Consciousness moving forward while I'm getting well in India, and everybody's thinking, we have international society. We have 2 storefronts. We have 2 storefronts, and we're an international movement. And so but they had so much faith in Srila Prabhupada that they said, yeah, okay, we're going to keep it together. And by the time Srila Prabhupada came back, there were temples in Santa Fe, New Mexico. There were centers in Montreal, all over. They were growing like anything. And then Srila Prabhupada sent disciples to London, where his godbrothers said that it's impossible to preach to the Western people. They came back, told Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada that it's impossible to preach in the Western world. These people can't understand anything. And then Prabhupada sends 3 householders. And they started an international movement because they met the Beatles. They lived with the Beatles. They were living in John Lennon's house for a long time. And Prabhupada lived in John Lennon's house. Imagine the benefit he got. We can't understand these things. These are transcendental activities. These are far beyond our ability to fully comprehend. To comprehend, one shouldn't even try to, because to try to understand the workings of the mind of the pure devotees of the Lord, in one sense, it's kind of offensive, but in another sense, it's our duty to understand the mission that Srila Prabhupada started. Prabhupada didn't start churchianity. He started a missionary movement. He started a movement that was meant to be active. It was meant to be out like a fully outreach program. He would often tell people that, people would come to government officials, clergy officials would come to Srila Prabhupada and say, why are our boys and girls who had rejected Judaism, had rejected Christianity, had rejected everything, and now they're becoming so enlightened, so enthused to engage in spiritual life? And Prabhupada says, because I'm giving them the truth. I'm giving them something that they can actually understand. I'm just now reading a nice book. I can't remember the first part of the title, but it's a book of all the Vaishnavis, that's how you want to call them, the lady devotees that were Prabhupada's disciples, talking about their experiences being with Srila Prabhupada, right?
Bonds of love.
Say it again.
Bonds of love.
Yeah, Bonds of Love, Srila Prabhupada's daughters. Yeah, I'm on the R's, so I'm getting pretty close. It goes by alphabetical order. And you can see so much, so much there is how Krishna consciousness was dynamic. We had these girls that were 14, 15 years old, leaving home and joining the Hare Krishna movement, 16 years old, 18 years old. They'd already been vegetarians. They became vegetarians at 9 or 10 years old. Their parents thought they were going to die. I remember when I was in college, I became a vegetarian. And my mother looked, I came home, I said, no meat, fish, eggs, no white flour, no sugar, no white rice, everything. And my mother just looked me in the eye and she said, if you'll go, I'll pay for your psychiatrist. she thought I fell off the cliff. I won't tell you what happened when I walked home one day with a shaved head. And I used to have very long hair, a completely shaved head and wearing an orange robe. Lock me up. At that point, all she could do was cry because it was beyond her expectations. And so, but we did this. All of us did this because we were on a missionary. We had joined something that we understood the value of, and we were willing to sacrifice. And now we have to understand this. And I'm sure from my discussions with devotees, they appreciate the sacrifice. They appreciate the sacrifice. But that ability to perform that same sacrifice is still available. It's not that it was available only between 1966 and 1978 or something like that. It's not that it was only available for a finite point of time. That ability to sacrifice like that is alive and well. It's just a matter of us embracing it. It's a matter of us embracing that ability to perform that sacrifice. And as Srila Prabhupada has said many times, you don't have to give up your occupation, you don't have to give up your position in life, but we have to utilize this life in the service of the Supreme Lord. And that means that, and that idea of karma yoga comes up in the ninth and yet karosi, jetasnasi, jetahosi, dadati, that whatever you do, whatever you give away, whatever charity, austerities you perform, whatever charity you give, do that as an act of love for me. And it's described in the commentaries that this is the essence of karma yoga. Karma yoga, connecting our actions to Krishna. Yoga means to connect. Karma yoga, connecting that which we do with the Supreme Lord. So it doesn't matter. Because we can read in the 18th chapter, when you get to like the 40th verse of the 18th chapter, Krishna begins to describe Brahmins, peaceful, self-control, the Kshatriyas. They're like the administrators and stuff, and the Vaishyas, they're business people, and the Sudras are helpers. And it doesn't matter what one is. It's Krishna consciousness has no caste consciousness, although we may have a little bit of lingering, what would you say, lingering discriminations or lingering, what help me with the word, Balaram Shakti. We may have lingering prejudices or lingering bias. He's an English professor, so I call on him a lot. And so the idea is that we may have some biases in our heart, but Krishna says in the Gita, he says, it doesn't, whatever your nature is, you just do that for me. It doesn't matter if you're a Brahmin, a Kshatriya, a Vaishya, a Sudra, you give that to me and you can achieve perfection. Doesn't mean if you're black or white or red or green or male or female or this oriented or that oriented. These things have absolutely nothing to do with spiritual conception of life. These are all material conceptions of life. And the more we remain on the material conception of life, the deeper we get sucked into the material atmosphere. And who wants to get sucked into the material atmosphere? It's a place of difficulty. As I said, it's a place of anxiety. We don't belong in a place. Our very existence is in this atmosphere of non-existence, and as more as we identify with this non-existent place, the longer we get to stay here. This is the facts. These are the, what do you call these? This is the raw material here. 100% raw material. Srila Prabhupada doesn't mince words. I mean, he can be very kind and very loving and very nice. But when he's, see, one of the things that I've often explained that we have to, I don't know if the word is be careful, but understand, I think it's a good way. But Srila Prabhupada, we now see Prabhupada as the Vyasa-san Prabhupada. Because we unless we read all these books that the devotees have written about their personal experiences of Prabhupada and see how Prabhupada dealt with men and women equally, how Prabhupada dealt with situations, how Prabhupada did things in a certain way with individual people. Sometimes when they needed a little bit of, they say it's soft as a rose and as hard as a thunderbolt. In personal relationships, Prabhupada was very kind and giving and understanding. So many times that there would be lady disciples that had a need, and Prabhupada would say, give them what they need. I remember in London, he went around and he saw that they didn't have some certain things. You're meant to protect. Protection means to make sure weekly, he said to the leaders, weekly go to see every lady in the temple and ask them, do you need anything? Not what do you need? No, ask in a way that invites response. Don't ask in such a way that rejects response. Act in such a way, in other words, don't act in such a way that they feel that I'm a burden. Act and ask in such a way that has a sense of love and care. This is the meaning of our movement. Our meaning is based on love and trust, love and care and trust that everyone will have your best interest at heart. And so then we don't want to just have the Vyasa-san understanding of Srila Prabhupada, where these rascals, these hogs, these dogs, these I mean, Prabhupada can roar from the Vyasa sun. He can roar from the Vyasa sun. But that's one aspect of Srila Prabhupada. We don't want to, Prabhupada's not a, he's a multi-dimensional personality. It reminds me, one time I was in Houston, I was with His Holiness Giridhara Swami, and we went to the pharmacy because I have a thyroid, I need thyroid medicine. And so, because I travel so much, I have so many different pharmacies. I use a grocery store, I use CVS, I use Walgreens. And the lady, it was like one of those drive-in ones, and the lady said, looked at me, she says, why are you a multi-profile personality? And Gary Dyer Swami started laughing so hard. He says he's definitely a multi-person, kind of multi-profile personality. But so we got a good laugh out of it. But we have to understand and really, really learn to emulate and absorb Srila Prabhupada as he is, and understand that Prabhupada is personally present with us in these books. Srila Prabhupada is personally present in the descriptions of the interactions that he had with the devotees, what type of person he was. This is that, and when we can understand that, and appreciate that, then the words that we hear coming from his books will have meaning. When the words that we hear coming from those who had this personal experience with Srila Prabhupada, they'll actually have the ability to absorb Prabhupada and to be an instrument in the service of Srila Prabhupada. When the pendulum goes to one side, there's so much pressure and tension that it forces it to go to the other side. And then there's so much pressure and tension, it forces it to go to the other side. Yukta hadas vihadascha. We're meant to be moderate in our habits of eating, sleeping, working, and recreation. We're not meant to be just fanaticals on one aspect. When we just focus on these, what do you call it? I mean, they're not. We can't say these challenges that we experience in our society aren't important, but they're just. It's just like one time I saw this guy. He lost his job. His car broke down, and this and that. And one of his friends said, he calls him up, and he was complaining and telling him this and telling him that. And the person, but how are you? He said, well, and he said, geez, I just realized I was telling you about, I lost my job. My car broke down. My girlfriend, dumped me, and this happened. He says, I'm sounding like a country Western song. Because the person, but how are you? Oh, I'm okay. So the fact that you lost your job, the fact that your car broke down, the fact that your girlfriend dumped you, the fact that these things are just incident. These are things that are just, actions that happen to you. These things can be overcome. The point is that we need to be okay spiritually inside. We need this process of Krishna consciousness vibrant within our hearts. And when it's vibrant within our hearts, then we have a desire to go out and share Krishna consciousness. And that's the goal. We don't want to lose the missionary spirit of our society. Just like every day I go out, I have a little backpack that I got at the TSI, the Sangha Initiatives for the teenagers. I go to all their meetings. And it's equipped with my business cards, and I have small books. No matter where I go, I distribute books. I'm not I'm not a full-time Sankirtan devotee anymore, but wherever and whenever I go out, which is very infrequent. I just got the vaccination, so in 2 more weeks I'll get the second one. And maybe I'll be able to be radioactive or something, or not radioactive or whatever. And be able to go out and associate a little bit more with devotees and to do more, outreach and stuff like that, because a little bit confined. But we have this gift that's been given to us by Srila Prabhupada, and we should take advantage of it. I don't have to use the word should. It's like it's extreme mercy it's unbelievable mercy, inconceivable mercy that we have an opportunity to assist Srila Prabhupada in his mission, to be one. When we leave this body and we're exiting this body, and whomever we meet, the Vishnu Dutas or the Yama Dutas, and just say, I'm one of Prabhupada's people. I'm one of Prabhupada's peeps. I'm one of Prabhupada's people. do I get like a, if I get a get out of jail free card, or can I have a like a reduced sentence or something? And we will get it. We'll definitely get that. We'll definitely get that opportunity. So we kind of like just spoke a little bit from the introduction. It ended up being like a introduction to Bhagavad Gita class, and a little bit about, due to Rukmini Devi Dasi's question. You know, for me, it's hard to wrap my brain around not wanting. I'd almost rather be suffering in the material world than just being nothing. I think I'd rather have the pains and pleasures of the material world than just being non-existent. To me, being non-existent, what? I mean, to me, it's funny. I mean, why would you want to do that? I mean, Prabhupada explains it because you're so frustrated. That's your only option out now. So usually I have a little more, what do you call it, back and forth, a discussion. But Rukmini Devi Dasi Mataji Prabhu inspired me to open up that fourth chapter. Very good explanation for that situation. And it's right there. All we have to do is read Srila Prabhupada's books, and all of our questions and all of our doubts will be, you can be surprised. You can open up any book at any time, at any place, in any circumstance, and it'll answer some question that you have. So any reflections from this reading and a few of the words I spoke, any reflections or any takeaways, any questions or any inspirations?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Ramesh. Cheers. So, question, I think Sadhguru Chaitanya Prabhu, please go ahead, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for the class. I would like to ask a question like, when Arjuna was bewildered by the duties, what he's supposed to do in the battlefield, instead of killing the cousins.
Okay, you're going to have to speak a little bit slower because my computer doesn't, my speakers, I turned it up as loud as I could. But...
Okay, is it okay better now?
Yeah, just speak a little slowly.
Okay. No, Arjuna initially was bewildered about his duties. Like, how can we kill the grandfathers, teachers, and brothers? Then why you want to do, what I'm going to enjoy with this kingdom? All these questions when he has in his mind, Krishna personally there to, satisfy and then give a way to go, how to move forward. But when we got bewildered in our household duties, like growing up the kids and the family issues and, managing our career and with the social responsibilities. And when we get such bewildered mind in our situation, what is the way that it can get out of this mindset? Then we can move forward. And sometimes, Maharaj, this also tends to lose the interest in the sadhanas and even service, something like that. So how do we keep up, manage all these things in an efficient way?
Very, very, very important question, huh? Very important question. Actually, if you read Bhagavad Gita, you'll find the answer. I'll just open it up here for a little bit. Because Arjuna asked a lot of questions in the beginning of the 8th chapter. And, he wanted to know about Brahman. He wanted to know about who is the Lord of sacrifice. He wanted to know what is a living entity, what is material nature. And especially he wanted to know, because at the end of the 7th chapter, Krishna told Arjuna that you can know me even at the time of death. So he was really curious about that because he's in a battle. And so Krishna tells him, if you think of me alone, you'll come to me. And so Arjuna is thinking, well, wait a second, if maybe I should go back to the forest Because what happens if, you're thinking like, well, what happens if I don't think of you? And Krishna explains, Yam Yam Bhavi Smaran Bhavi, if you, whatever you think of, to that state you're going to attain without fail. So then Arjuna is thinking, well, my original idea of just giving all this up and giving up my occupation. In other words, that's what you're talking about, your occupation. Arjuna is thinking about his social position. Arjuna is thinking about his family responsibilities, and one of his family responsibilities is to kill his guru and to kill his grandfather. One of his responsibilities from Krishna. I mean, talk about a heavy responsibility. Our responsibilities are minuscule compared to what Arjuna was facing. And so Arjuna's thinking, I should just go back. And then we get the famous word tasmat saveshu kaleshu. When you hear the word tasmat, Srila Prabhupada explained in the lecture, it means therefore. Therefore, all the things that I've said, remember me, whatever you think of, you'll go to. And now the conclusion is, therefore, Arjuna, at the same time, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna. So Arjuna is kind of leaning forward and thinking, maybe I can go. Maybe Krishna is telling me I can go. And at the same time, carry out your prescribed duty of fighting with your activities dedicated to me, your work, your family, your social responsibilities, all these things dedicated to Krishna, utilizing your mind and intelligence to fix it on Krishna, you'll attain me without doubt. And one of the points that I heard you say is that that these types of responsibilities discourage you from sadhana. I would suggest, I mean, please don't do this, but imagine a life without sadhana and having to deal with these. I cannot imagine a life without chanting the holy names, following the 4 regulated principles, engaging in reading Srila Prabhupada's books. And if it's only, I have one friend that's a doctor that is reading 15 minutes a day, Srimad Bhagavatam, and has just completed a 60-day goal. That every day for 60 days, they read, I'll just say she, because anyway, she read the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam 15 minutes a day, and now she just finished the 4th canto. And then she didn't read all 4 cantos in 60 days with 15 minutes, but she's moving along. And without that input of spiritual knowledge on a daily basis, and without that practice, I can't imagine how one could function better in society as a social entity, exist in dealing with the difficulties that the material world has without the option of having a way to extract oneself from that situation. For me, that would be almost impossible even to imagine. So for me, when the difficulties come, even Queen Kunti prayed to Krishna when Krishna was leaving for Dwarka, please, actually Yudhishthira convinced him to stay a little bit longer. When Kunti prayed, I would rather have all the difficulties. And what kind of, they tried to kill Bhima. They tried to burn down the house. They kicked him out of their country. So many things happened to Kunti that talk about a person that qualifies for PTSD treatment. It's just like, she's like the top of the list for someone that should be trying to avoid, having a traumatic experience where all the things, and she's prays to Krishna, let these things continue to happen. Because if they do, you'll be present in my life. And with you being present in my life, I know I'll always be protected. And so for me, the idea of engaging in our sadhana bhakti is it's like having Krishna having lifted Govardhan Hill, and we all being able to enter under the protection of Krishna's energy, Krishna's potency, Krishna's understanding of things. So how do we do it? We do everything in the consciousness that my job, my family, my social response, all these things are done, all these things. Some of the little kids are going by and they're looking, they know I have cookies. They're looking in the window. And so all these activities we can do for Krishna, and that, see, the thing is, if you read the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, in the 10th verse, Srila Prabhupada explains that everyone is in want of an ultimate goal. When I was a little kid, I had a tricycle. That was it, man. Then I wanted a bicycle. That was my goal, to get a bicycle. And then when I had a bicycle, that was it. Then I wanted a car, So in a material sense, our goals are always fluctuating. They're always expanding according to the change of the body. Now I'm getting a little older. I'm 68 years old. So my needs are not the same. I'm not looking for a tricycle anymore on a material level. But if we have a spiritual pivoting point by which we have a pivoting goal, a point of spiritual understanding that we want to understand Krishna, there's nothing on the material level that can bar us from understanding our relationship with Krishna. Your job can't do that. Your family responsibilities won't do that. Your relationship with your spouse can't do that. Nothing can eliminate that. There's no material Machita Sava Durgani Mat Prashada Tadishasi, that if we can become conscious of Krishna, we can cross over all the obstacles of life. This is like the 58th, 59th verse of the 18th chapter. Machita Sava Durgani. If we can become conscious of Krishna, we'll cross over all the obstacles. But if we do the ahankara shrinu, if we don't hear because of false ego, we're going to be lost. Krishna tells us if we don't hear, we'll be lost. If we do hear, we'll be found. We'll be there. We'll be right on target. So this is my advice, or not, I know my advice, this is my prayer, that you can find the shelter in Krishna. I gave the challenge. I see that Naveen Krishna Das has his hand. I'm going to get to him in 2 seconds, but I just wanted to bring this up. I was invited in Houston one time to give a class because the youth, I'm kind of like a youth Swami, especially teenagers, and so they brought all the youth to see me, and all the parents came, obviously. And so I told the kids, when you go to school on Monday, I want you to find one thing in the classroom that reminds you of Krishna. What's that, Mars? I said, just like if you go to the fountain and take a drink of water, you can understand that Krishna is a taste of water. Theoretically, we can understand that. How Krishna is a taste of water, that'll take a PhD degree in spiritual understanding. Just to understand, when you drink water, there's Krishna. What else, Maharaj? I say, if you see somebody that has some kind of ability, some kind of extra power, then you can say that, understand that Krishna is the ability in everyone. And then what else? I said, I'm not going to give you every single one that you're going to find. It's your duty to find them, because if you find them, then you'll remember them. And I said, at the end of your school year, I think it's 180 or 185 days of school. When you walk into school, you have 185 different ways you'll see Krishna. It becomes a challenge. And I said, okay, kids, you're off the hook. Now I'm going to talk to your parents. I say, when you go to the office, if you're working or whatever your occupation is, that day, every day, you have to find one more place where you find Krishna. And kids only have to go to school 185 days. I think I figured it out. Most people that are, unless you're a teacher, most people that are engaged in an occupation, they have to work like 220 days a year. And so when you graduate from school and you graduate from college and you get all your degrees and you're out working, you have more of an opportunity. You have 220 times per year to find a place where Krishna is present in your occupation, in your family, in your social environment. And as you do that, you'll see Krishna within and without everything. And one who does that, Krishna's never lost to that person, and that person's never lost to Krishna. So there's no bewilderment in that person's consciousness. So that was just a little addition, like a little subtitle to the thing, that we give ourselves challenges. It's good to give ourselves challenges. It's good to give ourselves goals. It's good to give ourselves purposes. What is our purpose? What is our goal? Naveen Krishna Das.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you very much. Wonderful insight. I have a comment and a question.
Sure.
Comment is, thank you very much. So you made a beautiful point. I just taken the notes. So you made a point. So Krishna knows everything, but not many people knows about Krishna. That's one thing. Second thing you said, like dual enrollment, very interesting.
For some reason, I can't, it's a little bit slow. So
Okay, so I was just saying that you made a beautiful points. Couple of points was that itself is a class, a dual enrollment. So that need to be a food for thought. That's a good point. And the second thing said that non-existent. So similar, I was thinking non-existent and existing. Same thing. Krishna also says permanent thing in a non-permanent environment. So that's also similar experience. There were more comments. The question is that you made a beautiful point about Prabhupada. Prabhupada, what we know, the second generations, we see, of course, we read Prabhupada, but we see him in Vyasasan, we worship him, we dress him. But those who have a relationship in person, their experience of perceiving him is different. Dealt. Of course, we go with a literally, like, Prabhupada said this, Prabhupada said this, Prabhupada said this, Bhagavatam says this. That's true. That's perfectly all right. There's no doubt about it. How Prabhupada exhibited that as a book Bhagavatam, something phenomenal. Only one has an experience, direct perception. It brings a different dimension. So we can read letters, we can hear videos, all this thing, but experience itself is a gift. Not everybody can become Prabhupada disciples. So of course, we are connected through Prabhupada disciples, but that's where the challenge also comes. So sometimes we can take literally, Prabhupada said this, that is true, but how did he act it? How did he behave that? So that's something may match and may not match. So you made a beautiful point. You'd like to add something, taken any example, what he said in the book and what he did different, so it gets add some
Well, Prabhupada was like in the books, even within the books, sometimes his personality, his personal relationship with people come out. One of the things I would love to see done for somebody that wants to get a PhD in religious studies from some prestigious school is to understand. I mean, this is when Prabhupada was writing, we know where Prabhupada was when he wrote the first canto. He was in Vrindavan, right? Second canto, third canto, fourth canto, fifth, sixth, seventh, 8, 9, 10. Where was Prabhupada when he wrote the fourth chapter or the fourth canto of the Bhagavatam? What year was it? What was happening in the world? What was happening in the city that he was when he was translating that? What was happening with the Vaishnavas that were in that situation, in that temple when he wrote that? And what was the situation of the devotees that were in the international circle of his disciples that was going on at that time? It would be a very interesting study. I'm not very academic myself, and I would like to see somebody do that type of academic study. But we can see just like when you get at the 8th canto of the Bhagavatam, you study the story of Gajendra and the crocodile. Gajendra was an elephant, and Prabhupada said he was an animal of the land, and the crocodile was the animal of the water. And because the fight was happening in the water, the crocodile had the advantage. So at that time, one of the sannyasis had slipped from their vows and had a relationship with a lady. And Prabhupada said that just like if you're not situated in your proper ashram, he brought this up in the Bhagavatam. He brought it up. It completely opening up. If you're not properly situated in one ashram, that just like Gajendra wasn't situated properly in the water, because his nature was to be on the land. So if your nature, a lot of devotees, I took sannyas at 32, definitely a little too young, although I've somehow or another I made it, hands up, Krishna. And but I know some people took sannyas at 20, 21, 22. It's just like, imagine if you're 22 years old, you've been a devotee for like 3 years, and Prabhupada said, I think you should take sannyas. You're not going to say no. You may not know how, you don't really know what it means. And then later on, the lure of these things and the material things come about you, and you have some difficulty, which we can discuss. There's 2 verses. Twice in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that one who falls down and is engaged in devotional service is still to be considered saintly. So Prabhupada says in that 8th canto that don't give up the fight. If you're not comfortable fighting on the land, then get in the water and fight. In other words, just go back to being a householder, but don't give up your endeavor in spiritual life. Probably brought it out in his books. That's just one example I can think of. And then there are so many books. I mean, especially there's, I would say at least a half dozen of personal interactions that Prabhupada had. I mean, just like Vishaka wrote that book, 7 years and 14 days or something like that, whatever, 5 years and 11 months and 6 days. And then, Shamsundar is chasing rhinos. I mean, talk, Mukunda Maharaj, one time Mukunda Maharaj went to Prabhupada, he read that if you sleep more than 6 hours a day, you're in the mode of ignorance. And so he went to Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, I need more than 6 hours of sleep. Prabhupada said, just sleep as much as you need to be able to perform devotional service. And so here you see Prabhupada's practical application. In other words, it's not like etched in stone that if you have to sleep 6 hours, if you're working very, very hard and you need a little extra sleep, take the extra sleep. Prabhupada wasn't a fanatic. We fanaticize it. We become, and we usually pick certain points that are, key to our what would you say, abilities, and sometimes key to our pet peeves or our pet understandings and stuff like that, and we magnify it in such a way that it becomes like the absolute truth. That if you're not eating 1 pat of butter every 2 days, you're not a Goswami. It just becomes insanity. It's the pendulum going all the way to the thing. And what that pendulum is on the side, I want to emphasize, that causes tension. That causes tension, and we don't need tension between Vaishnavas. We need love and trust. We need to be able to trust each other and to love each other enough to say that, okay, even if this person has difficulty, not to just, I've explained this situation many times to devotees. Sorry, I'm going a little over schedule. If you want me to stop, I'll stop. I even have a little note here for myself. Slow down, because sometimes I get very bugged up in the program.
That's fine, Maharaj. Please go ahead. Special occasions, we always go ahead. No problem.
But just take, for example, somebody has difficulty at ISKCON. The first thing it is, the guy's a bum, she's a bum. Don't let him do any service. Don't let him do this. I mean, where's the compassion? Where's the compassion? Where's the understanding? I mean, if somebody makes an offense, it's their duty to beg forgiveness for the offense. It's their duty. Durvasa Muni, he went to Brahma, he went to Shiva, he went to Vishnu. Vishnu says, you got to go to Ambarish and ask for forgiveness. And now when he went to Ambarish, it was just like he was feeling so bad that he drank a sip of water, and he got Durvasa Muni upset. He was feeling guilty himself. As a Vaishnava, he was feeling guilt for taking a sip of water, because that's what he thought he was supposed to do. And so take, for example, Indra, right after the Brahmins, right after the Yajnik Brahmins were doing their yajnas, and the wives of the Yajna Brahmins had to feed Krishna. Very interesting story, because Krishna sent the cowherd boys to the Yajnik Brahmins and said, we're hungry, let's ask them for some lunch. They wouldn't even give them the time of day. They wouldn't even give them anything. And so the boys went back and said, Krishna, whoa, nobody's ever refused it. What do we? And Krishna said, don't worry, that's the way of begging. Sometimes you'll get something, sometimes you won't. Just go to the wives. And the wives heard that Krishna's hungry, Krishna's hungry. Oh my God. They just took all the stuff that their husbands were using, and they just went and gave it to Krishna. And then after that incident, Krishna's walking with the cowherd boys, and he sees his father about to do the Indra Yajna. And he asks his father, what are you doing? He says, don't worry, you're too little to understand. He says, no, I want to understand. I want to understand. You're doing some kind of yajna. I want to understand. Is this scriptural, or is this something that is from our village culture? So we have this we have to understand that a lot of the things, especially now that we're getting a lot of what would you say, generations of Indian people joining our temples, what was cultural, what is scriptural. We have this opportunity in Prabhupada's books to understand. We have to keep Prabhupada's understanding alive and not just some cultural thing. I gave up my Judeo-Christian culture. We have to give up our demigod culture and things like this to understand our relationship with Prabhupada. Not that we rejected them, that's not what I'm saying, but we understand them in their proper context. So Krishna convinced Nanda Maharaj and the cowherd men to do the Govardhan puja. Indra becomes upset. Indra sends the Samvataka cloud. Right? Of course, and Indra's such a chicken at that time. He makes the cloud go forward. I'll be right behind you. He has some kind of subtle understanding that there's subconsciously, maybe super soul in his heart or something saying this might not be a good idea, but I'm going to do it anyway. And so he pours down the water. He pours it down like anything on Govardhan Hill. Even these big, huge thunderbolts, and it's like flower petals. Govardhan Hill feels it as if flower petals are being dropped upon it. And so after 7 days of Krishna holding it up with so many meanings, I mean, just unlimited meanings in this pastime that we could just do like a 5-hour class one day on just one of them. And you caught that one, right? On just one of those pastimes underneath Govardhan Hill. And at the end, Indra realized, oops, OMG, or OTG, oh, that's God. and he calls everything off. And what does Krishna do? Krishna doesn't take him in the middle of all the cowherd boys and cowherd men and cowherd girls and cowherd ladies and say, that's just stone Indra, beat him up. No, they take him to a secluded place. Indra Krishna is in a secluded place. It's now known as Govinda Kund. It's a place where it's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful kund. It's a beautiful atmosphere right next to Govardhan Hill. It has so many pastimes that go on there also. And Indra apologizes, but Indra knows he's in so much trouble. Just like if you're having conflict with somebody else, you need a conflict mediator. Right? You have conflict mediators. There's a verse in the 6th or 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and Krishna said, one who is equal to this, and mediators is dear to me. Krishna even knows that in the Bhagavad Gita that we need mediators. It's all there in the books, right? And so Sarabhikau comes with Indra, because Indra becomes the Sarabhikau becomes a conflict mediator, because Krishna is very affectionate towards cows, and so as soon as the cow appears, Krishna's going to be in a good mood. He's going to forget, okay, Indra. And so then Indra apologizes, and Krishna accepts the apology, and he says, now go back and do your duties and don't make this mistake anymore. It's not like, it's not like he rallied all the cowherd boys and all the cowherd girls and the cowherd men and the cowherd ladies and said, let's get revenge on this person for making a mistake. Everybody, raise your hands if you've never made a mistake. I'll touch your feet. Everybody makes a mistake. And so these are the incidents, and I'm trying to understand what the original question was now, because I need to follow my own directions here. Because in the Gita, it described that even if one commits the most abominable action, if they're engaged in at least trying to engage in the practice of devotional service, they're considered to be saintly. And in the commentary to that verse, Prabhupada explains that the power of devotional service is so strong that even if one commits the most abominable act, Krishna will beautify that. It doesn't say purify, it says beautify that person. He'll beautify that person. Understand how Prabhupada picks these, I don't know, I can't understand, but just see how Prabhupada picks these words. He beautifies the devotee. In other words, through that purification, that devotee remains a beautiful, what would you say, Vaishnava and able to engage in devotional service. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, and if one doesn't see them in this way, then the person that doesn't see that person that has fallen down to the most abominable sinful activity and doesn't see them as being rectified and being seen as a sadhu, that person that doesn't see that way is committing a sinful activity himself by not seeing that. And this is to not see that way is against scripture. And that person is, I end my point. Your Honor, I end my arguments. I end my discussion. Take it to the jury. And so these things are there. And not, for us to have a personal relationship with Krishna, we can have that personal relationship with Krishna through the Gita. We can have that personal relationship with Prabhupada through his books and that aspect of Prabhupada through his tapes. Now you get into the letters, it's a little less strong. Of course, it's just specific points, and we can't take a specific thing and make it a principle. There are principles and there are things that are details. We don't want to mix the principles with the details. Or we don't want to make the details into a principle. Because detail, there's a saying in the West, I don't know if they have it in India or wherever place else, the devil's in the details. They say the devil's in the details. So you start dealing with the details and making them a principle. Yet Karoshi, whatever you do, it doesn't say that you have to do this, and this. No, whatever you do. It's not a detailed statement. Whatever you do, whatever you give away, it doesn't mean your money, your time, your energy, your labor. It doesn't mean, it says whatever you do, whatever you give away. Whatever charity. Charity doesn't have to be just dollars and cents. Charity can be many things. And so this is the conception that we have from Srila Prabhupada's understanding. And then I got initiated by Srila Prabhupada late in my life. I joined in 75. It took a while for me to figure it all out. And I saw Prabhupada 4 or 5 times. One time I saw him give 3 or 4 Bhagavatam classes. I tried to sneak on a walk with them, got kicked out by the sannyasis because I was just like a brahmachari. And I didn't have the credentials to get in. Prabhupada had 50 guards. You just couldn't walk and knock on Prabhupada's door like you could at 26 2nd Avenue. And Prabhupada say, come in. It wasn't like that. So I saw Prabhupada give class. I saw that side of Prabhupada. I saw Prabhupada walking with the devotees, giving morning walk. I wasn't in the morning walk. I saw Prabhupada going around it was in Mayapur. It was in Mayapur, the Mayapur festival. I saw him ringing the bell. I was jumping up and down like a madman. And I figured it out that Prabhupada would go around the deities, so I ignored, and everybody was following him, and he was leading the pack. So I just started leading the pack. That meant I hope that's not. And he was leading all the Vaishnavas. And so I just went over to the bell on the other side. I didn't go around the deities so they could be in front of Prabhupada and say, okay, now I'm with them. Then maybe I'll get some kind of mercy here. But it's not that I was sitting around having a daily discussion like my friend Brahmatirtha, who was at the first, who was Bob Cohen, the person in Perfect Question, Perfect Answers. It was at the very first Mayapur festival, and he was the only guest. He was the only one that all the devotees wanted to preach to. So he says Prabhupada protected me by bringing me into his hut so all the devotees wouldn't preach to me all day long. He would do it in such a way that it would make sense to me. Of course, he said that Malati and Yamuna actually helped him understand, and they understand Prabhupada very, very well. And so I also have the same relationship with Srila Prabhupada as most of the 2nd generation, 3rd generation, 4th generation, 5th generation devotees have. And that is my understanding of those who, how do you say it, are not on one extreme of the pendulum or the other, but are equipoised Vaishnavas that have an ability to understand. Just like one time I was in Hawaii, and I was there with Shruti Kirti Prabhu, who was Prabhupada's servant for many years. I said, imagine you're with Prabhupada. Tell me what aspect of Prabhupada you think of the most. He said he was the most practical person I ever met. He didn't say that he was glowing. He didn't say that his glance was this. He didn't say that he was calling people hogs, dogs, camels, and asses. He didn't say he was banging his fist on the thing and demanding this. He said he was the most practical person he ever met. Now, when I hear he was the most practical person he ever met, I think probably went to Russia. They couldn't get much. They get a few little cabbage, a little potato. If you were lucky, a little rice, a little sugar, a little milk. And so Prabhupada made sweet rice. So imagine, now Prabhupada's got some leftover sweet rice. He's in Moscow. He doesn't have anything, so he has to put the leftover sweet rice. Does anybody know where he put it? Where did he put the leftover sweet rice? Raise your hand if you know. George, where did he put it?
In the Loda, Guru Maharaj? Did I say that correctly?
What?
A Loda? A Loda?
Yeah, but where was that Loda located?
In the restroom?
In the bathroom, yes. Prabhupada took the Loda out of the bathroom, cleaned it, and put the leftover sweet rice in it. Now tell me about practicality. You talked about some yajnik Brahmin, you going in and taking the Loda out of the bathroom, cleaning it and putting your leftover prasadam in it for the next day. If that's not the most beautiful thing, the most loving thing you can think of, the most practical thing you can think of. And that's Srila Prabhupada. He's not a fanatic. He preaches, Prabhupada, like especially I heard him in India. Some people tell me the Hindi lectures are really heavy. But you see, Srila Prabhupada, he has that, like that lion-like roaring from the Vyasa sun, that especially when it comes to people, impersonalists, especially when it comes to impersonalists, or scientists that she probably wasn't against science, he was against them not except going from the premise that there is God rather than going from the premise that there isn't God. Just change it. Just try to do your scientific investigation with the premise that there is God, and see where you can find God within the scientific or the material nature. Prabhupada knew that Yamuna was sick. He saw her. He kicked one of the men out of the car and said, "Let her sit here." Prabhupada saw that Yamuna she thinks she had jaundice or something like that. He hadn't seen her for a few days, and he went and found her in a closet. He said, "Give her facility so she can get better. She needs this, 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 and this." The Prabhupada was very, very kind to the ladies, very, very kind to Mukunda, who needed more sleep. Let's not be narrow-minded. Let's see Prabhupada in his whole person. And at the same time, have the reverence and the submissive inquiry and the rendering of service, tadviri paripashena paripasena sevaya, that have that inquiring nature, just like Arjuna. When Krishna told Arjuna that I spoke this science of Gita to the sun god, and Arjuna is doing the math and figures out it was 120 million years ago, he doesn't say to Krishna, "Man, you didn't speak to the sun god. It was 120 million years ago." Arjuna doesn't talk like that. Arjuna says, "My dear Krishna, how am I to understand this?" He doesn't accuse Krishna of anything. He just says, "Krishna, how am I to understand that 120 million years ago you spoke this science of the Gita to the sun god?" This is how we approach. There's a process. It's a science. It's like in the back of my Gita here, the science of self-realization. Bhagavad Gita, the science of self-realization, not the religious fanaticism of self-realization. This is our process. It's given to us by Srila Prabhupada. So wonderful, so beautiful.
Thank you, Maharaj. So wonderfully gave us 20 examples. What is
I didn't
Prabhupada
slow
mentioned
down.
in books and how did he exhibit it. So it is amazing. Thank you very much. That was actually so enlightening. So see the perspective of book Bhagavatam and person Bhagavatam. Thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you, Maharaj. It's around 1 o'clock.
Yeah, we overwent our.
Yeah, that's fine, bro.
I apologize for that, but
No, bro. I wanted this to go on for some more time. Tomorrow is Ekadasi, so we are more than happy. Prabhu, any other last questions from the participants? Thanks for the participants, all who are on the call. Do we have any other call or any other question or comments for Maharaj? So I don't see anything on the chat.
Sharuta, do you have your Sharuta, do you have your hand up, or you just?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I should ask now.
So please, Maharaj, are you okay with this, Prabhu? Maharaj, to one more question.
Maybe a few more minutes.
Sure. Go ahead.
I mean, I have time, but I have a call at 2 o'clock, so.
Okay.
It's only 12 o'clock my time. Okay, I'm okay. I kept thinking.
Thank you very much, Prabhu, for the class, and I appreciate your suggestion to keep the cameras on. I especially needed this motivation to not multitask while listening, so thank you for that.
I have to give credit. I have to give credit to His Holiness Giriraj Swami, because he was the one that came up with the idea. Him and I exchange ideas all the time, and he said, "Why are they multitasking during our Zoom classes? The class is meant to be attentively heard." So I have give credit to my dear friend His Holiness Giriraj Swami.
Thank you. I needed that. So I have one question. Sometimes I feel like I get too caught up in the philosophy of the scriptures. And like I notice like contradictions or something that is maybe not relevant in today's age. So between knowledge and devotion, I understand that devotion is rated higher and like that should be focused on. But do you have any advice on how to not get caught up in the knowledge too much and just focus on devotion?
Yeah, that was Arjun's question 2 times, in the 3rd chapter beginning and the 5th chapter in the beginning, because Arjun says, you're saying that you're saying that knowledge is more important than, but you're saying that I'm supposed to act in devotion. I can't understand how these two connect. So my dear friend, His Grace Brahmatirtha Prabhu, I hope you've all read his book, not his discussion with Srila Prabhupada in Perfect Question, Perfect Answers. Him and I don't remember which one of us came up with this, but we call it paralysis by analysis. Paralysis, in other words, by over-analyzing things, we paralyze ourselves. And so in order to undo that, we have Gyan, which means knowledge, and then Vigyan, which means realized knowledge. So if you go, one of the ways to get Vigyan is to engage the Gyan in our practical activities. So as we engage our knowledge in practice, we'll gain Vigyan. And the best way to get Vigyan from Gyan is to give our Gyan, give our knowledge. Oh, Lalita, Hare Krishna. My dear close friend Lalita. Oh, I still remember you putting the medicine on when I broke my nose and got the big gash, and Lalita took care of my injury. Oh, wow. So getting back, you got your, don't look, I hope you're not driving and with the screen. Don't drive and be on the phone against the road. Yeah, she doesn't have your microphone on, Lalita, your microphone.
Yes, Maharaj, I'm going to turn it off.
Oh, yeah, please, don't drive and be on the phone. Don't drive and talk on the phone. Don't text and I don't want to lose you. So the idea is, especially if we go out and share Krishna consciousness, if we go out and share our knowledge of Krishna consciousness with others, we'll see other people being lifted up. And as other people get lifted up, we also go up with them. See, this is something that's very important to understand. And if you want, I can explain something in 5 minutes, but that's how we do it. we give out Krishna consciousness, we apply that which we learn, and don't just go that one say again, and trying to dissect and bisect and whatever you want to call it, the knowledge that we're getting, and just get overly involved in that. But as we share that knowledge, or first of all, we apply it to ourselves, and especially if we share that knowledge with others, we become so uplifted. That sharing becomes the most uplifting thing. That's what sustained us for years. In the beginning of the movement, we saw people, lives being changed minute by minute, moment by moment, day by day, and clearing of the cloud of illusion that inspired us to perform the austerities that we performed for so many years and are still performing. But I can get, if you want, I can give an example from President Obama, and I don't know the guy's first name, but he's a basketball player and his name is Curry. Only reason I know is that I can remember his name is it's an Indian spice. So President Obama started.
My son is saying Stephen Curry.
Yeah, Stephen Curry. Oh, you like basketball, huh?
No, it's my son was saying from behind. I don't know what he knows.
Yeah, the kids all know it. They know. I wish they knew the Bhagavad Gita verses and Bhagavatam verses as much as they know the stats on sports. That's so. There was an African American that got killed by a neighborhood watch in Orlando, and I don't remember what year it was. But so President Obama started My Brother's Keepers, which is a group of African American professional athletes and musicians and entrepreneurs and business people and stuff like that. And he's got over 100,000 volunteers now. And they had a townhouse meeting. And I've explained this before 100 times to devotees. So they had a townhouse meeting with some of the, especially the African American boys. And they're like young men, like 12 to 25 years old, to give them some grounding. And so what happened is that they had a townhouse meeting with maybe 20, 30 young men. And one of the young men asked former President Obama, what does it mean to be a man, especially an African American? What does it mean? And President Obama said, it doesn't mean you walk around with a 7-pound gold chain around your neck and trash talk people down to make you think that you're going up, because as you trash talk people down, you go down. And but if you go in any environment and bring that environment up by positive reinforcement, positive engagement, positive understanding, then as you do that, you go up with it and the people come up. He explains that that's how you bring yourself up to a higher level. Not only do you bring the people that in your environment up, you bring yourself up. And I do that on a material level, and I do it on a spiritual level. Just like the other day, I went to the doctor for the first time in a year and a half. And I told the lady, I can't remember her name, Ruth. I do remember Ruth. I said, that's a beautiful name. I had an aunt named Ruth. She was one of my favorite aunts. And she immediately went like this. Because I appreciated her, just because I appreciated her name, I could see her go like that. On a material level, it works. Now, on a spiritual level, she said, where are you from? I said, I'm from America. She said, why you look so different? Because I'm dressed like this, you know. And then on the report, it says occupation, monk for 46 years, 47 years. You've been a monk for 46. What's that monk thing all about? Then I got to give her a little Hare Krishna. And then she went a little bit higher. She was inspired that someone could be a monk for 46, 47, 48 years. And then the doctor came in and I'm reading Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers. And he goes, what are you reading? I go, Perfect Questions, Perfect Answer. My friend was just graduated from Rensselaer. I think it was Rensselaer or Rutgers or something like that. And he said he joined the Peace Corps and he had a conversation with the founder of the Hare Krishna movement. What's the Hare Krishna movement? I said, just take the book. It's a gift. You can find out all about it. You know, I mean, and he was saying, oh yeah, this is interesting. I'm going to read this book. Everybody goes up when we go up. Everybody goes. This is the process. This is our process. give goodwill, be it material or especially spiritual. We can begin on the material platform. Just like when I went to get an MRA, like it's not MRI, but because my head was always getting light. So I got an MRA for the blood vessel, right? And the lady that was at the counter, she had a scarf around it. I said, boy, that's a beautiful scarf. Immediately she went like this. Immediately she went up. And she said, who are you? Why are you dressed like that? And then I gave her a book. This is our business. Just like His Grace Vaisheshika Prabhu wrote a book, Our Family Business. Our family business is to, if we have to start by just saying something kind to them on the material level, to get them to think positively about themselves, and then they'll think positively about the person that said the positive thing, and now we got an end. It's not like a secret policy. We want them to even feel materially good. We want them to understand the spiritual value of things. We have a wonderful, wonderful opportunity in our life. So we don't want paralysis by analysis, Charuta Kale. We don't want paralysis by analysis. And the way to get out of that is to practice that which we hear and not just try to dissect, not try to just, understand it more on an intellectual level, but on a practical level, and then distribute that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Paralysis by analysis. That's a great problem is it doesn't translate that way into every language because it doesn't rhyme.
So thank you, Maharaj. Thank you for patiently answering all the questions, and we really appreciate. I gave you such a short notice. Within 2-3 days, you accepted this invite, and I also thank the devotee from New Jersey, Krishnamananda Prabhu. He was there with us in the last Sunday feast. He gave me your contact actually. That's how I was able to. So, and we definitely look forward for you to come in the future also and give us some classes.
I'd be happy to come, especially if I can see Lalita.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, Mataji will be there. And once this Corona thing is over, you should definitely visit our temple.
Sure, I'd like to come and visit. Yeah, I'd like to come and visit.
So Maharaj, with your permission, I have we'll go on with a couple of quick announcements and then we will conclude this session.
Okay, with your permission, I'll go relieve my bladder.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you.
Sorry.
No problem. Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hi, Lalita. Hare Krishna. Come, maybe contact me sometime. I'd like to hear how you're doing. I actually miss you and everybody up there. You and your husband.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hoping to host you in near future as we had discussed.
Yeah, please send me a note. You have my info, I think. You can get it from Guru Bhakti and stuff. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So thank you, devotees, and thank you for the attending today's Sunday feast. I just have a couple of quick announcements. First is tomorrow is Ekadasi, Vijay Ekadasi. So we have our Kirtan from 6 to 9 p.m. I'll be sending out the email tomorrow. And then this Saturday, again, yesterday there was an amazing session. I don't know, few devotees might have joined by Arjun Saka Prabhu. So that continues next Saturday. Again, it's at 8 p.m. So that was also on Mahaprabhu's pastimes. So we would like you to join on next Saturday. And then our big festival is coming up on the 28th on Sunday. So Gaur Purnima. So this is our new year.
Gaudiya New Year. Was eating funny.
Yes, Prabhu. Gaudiya New Year, Prabhu. So, and the more details will be sent, and we'll go from there. And so, any other announcements, Prabhu? If I've forgotten, Alek Prabhu, anything else you wanted to mention?
So, Kirtan, Prabhu, tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow Kirtan is from 6 to 9. I will send out the email, Prabhu.
Hi.
So, If nobody has any other announcements, we can end the session here with the Vaishnava Pranam. Vancha kalpatarubhyasya kripa sindhubhya cha patitanam bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.
Jai.
Bye.
Hare Krishna.